everybody. Giving everybody time to allow their audio to connect. Welcome, 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 welcome to a Friday Lunch and Learn with Waking Giants EDU. My name is Rosalind. I am the host moderator for these sessions, and I'm also the community engagement coordinator. So I am here to make sure everybody feels safe. Questions get answered, tech support if someone's struggling with a connection, all that good stuff. So if you have anything you would like to, like perfect example, I do things like that, I mute people. If you have anything you would like to ask Ana Maria or Martha during our Q&A, you can always use the chat function. The chat is a little speech bubble at the bottom of your screen. I cannot assume that everyone is Zoom professional. Zoom is most definitely widespread, but we are using all kinds of technology right now to stay connected. But if you click on the speech bubble, which is chat, you'll be able to ask questions. You'll be able to converse with people directly that you may see in the room. And again, you can ask us questions during the Q&A time. If you're not familiar with Waking Giants, we are a social impact company. We provide tools to businesses and individuals to fight the good fight. Some of those tools is we provide access to amazing, amazing authors like Dr. Peniel E. Joseph, Jen Harvey, oh man, Kathy Valentine from the Go-Go's. Like our list is pretty nice. And like we operate to create relationship and be able to have communication around tough subjects like the ones that RAICES deals with. So you're here to listen to a conversation and hopefully interact with one of our co-founders, Martha, and Ana Maria from RAICES. So she's that way for me, my boss. So take it away, boss.
Thank you, Ross. I appreciate you. Ana Maria, thank you so much for being here. I have, I think you're actually on mute. Yeah. Oh no, now you're on mute again. Okay, there it is. Hi. We're so honored to get to spend time with you this afternoon. Thank you for making space for us, especially given the ever-changing landscape of the work that you're doing. And for those that have not yet been introduced to the work that RAICES does, would you just tell us all a little bit about who you are, how this came to be, and the work that you respond to on a daily basis?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Martha and Ross and Jenny and Waking Giants for opening this space to talk a little bit about this issue. RAICES is a nonprofit organization that was founded back in 1986. It was actually just a group of people that really wanted to fight for immigrants' rights and to defend their human rights. And so it started very small, and it was mainly a social services kind of response from people seeing that there were families being released from detention centers and they were going to be our new community members, but they didn't have any connections sometimes or any assistance to resources. And so it was a group of people that started that way. If you fast forward to today, we have, sorry, my doggy is being vocal. Inevitably, right?
That's just like par for the course in Zoom. If we don't hear dog bark, we're not on a Zoom call.
Agreed. So if you fast forward to today with RAICES, we have been able to grow to provide the biggest brunt of our work is our direct legal services to families and community members, particularly undocumented community members. We are now also able to offer a wraparound social services component to that because, as I'm sure a lot of us know, it isn't just about your legal battle, but sometimes it's also about not having the resources to meet some of your most basic needs. And so our social services teammates do help with that. And then there's the portion where I work with advocacy, and in realizing that we can offer these services, we also acknowledge that change has to happen in order for us to not just be able to assist in the difficult things that even some of us, I can't navigate some of the most basic legal procedures, right? But it was also about advocating and fighting for policy change so that our new community members no longer have to endure the things that this government pushes upon them and causes them. So it's a bit of a different, organization in that we have both all legal advocacy and social services in one. And so I'm very proud to be part of that group.
Well, and one of the many things that I admire so much about you guys is that you have been able to be fluid in answering the needs as they've been piled on during this administration in particular. And to make sure that, it is my belief that you are doing the work that is promised by the Statue of Liberty, and that I think we all should be doing, because what you are making good on is the promise that is the highest and best version of this country. And I would love for you, can we talk a little bit about family separation and the court, what the court has said about family separation, and then the new interpretation of that today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Martha, for pointing our principles as a country, right? What we stand for as what is stated in the Statue of Liberty. And furthermore, it's also things that we are legally binded to. I mean, we have international legal binding to us to having an asylum process for people seeking refuge.
Yeah.
And so it has been a very heartbreaking violation of the law that this administration has been continuously doing, because they are breaking the law and they are continuously finding loopholes to current law that protects the human rights of people. We see that a lot right now in family separation, as you mentioned. We were part of the response to the 2018 family separation, which interestingly enough happened in the summer around this time.
Right.
And as you all know, many children were separated from their families, from their parents. To this day, there are still children that have not been reunited with their parents, children that remained here in this country and their parents were deported. And so that, that was unfortunately something that this administration found a loophole to legally do and violate people's human rights and safety. Today, we are unfortunately facing yet again another situation in which this can happen. On June 26th of this year, Judge G from a district court in California ruled that ICE had to release children in 3 detention centers, Carnes and Dilley, which are here in the state of Texas, and Berks, that is located in the state of Pennsylvania. And that was due to a lawsuit that our organization, along with our partners, Aldea and Proyecto Dilley, turned in. Basically, the lawsuit was demanding that people should be released from detention centers during a pandemic. I mean, it's spreading like wildfire. There are no protections in these detention centers. People didn't have soap for a very long time, no masks. We've had reports of people in Carnes stating that the sanitary soaps that they've been giving are burning their skin. And so it's not even things that are humanely, given to people to be able to stay safe and sanitary in these detention centers. So anyway, because of this lawsuit, we had Judge G in the California District Court state that the children had to be released from these detention centers. A caveat to that is that Judge G only has the power to mandate that for children. She's basing her decision on something that's called the Flores Agreement. This agreement was finalized back in the late 90s that basically protected the rights of children, in that it demanded that ICE could not keep children detained for more than 20 days. Now, I want to make something very clear that's happening right now, yet another violation. ICE has been violating this agreement at Carnes in Dilley and Berks, which are family detention centers, by keeping children there for more than 20 days. Many children in those places have been in there for more than 20 days. And so what's evolving from that is that the judge ordered that they had to release the children by today. Today was the deadline for ICE to release the children from those places. The problem with that is, again, Judge G only has the power to mandate that children are released, and what we want is for the children to be released with their families.
Right.
They can be released with their families. ICE has always had the power to release everybody together and safe. From the beginning, they've always had the power to release both the parents and the children. It has always been legally within their jurisdiction. They simply choose not to. Now, what's happening is that because of this caveat to Judge G's ruling, both the Department of Justice and the attorney who is supposed to be looking for the best interest of the children based on the Flores Agreement, they have now created a binary choice. And the choice is either parents sign to release, for ICE to release their children without them so that they can be quote unquote protected from the virus, or they can remain with their families inside the detention centers, giving them basically an indefinite date of release, so completely violating the Flores Agreement. And what's going to happen is that parents are going to be faced with just that choice. Either a parent is going to have to keep their child in unsafe conditions and eventually most likely be deported, or they're going to have to sign papers releasing their rights to be in together with their families. To make it even worse, what Judge G asked is that ICE figured out a permanent solution to address this issue. And what's happening is that this is going to give way for a permanent way for ICE to separate children from their families.
Oh, God.
This will continue to be the ruling if this happens. Last night, we were given notice that they have also, that Judge G has also granted an extension of 10 days to this ruling, meaning that no children will be released today. They have 10 more days to finalize this cruel and inhumane binary rule, which again only makes things worse in that not only are they going to separate children from their families, but they will continue to keep families and kids in these unsafe conditions past today.
And we, in ICE, we're trusting ICE, or they have charged ICE with building this solution?
Correct. And that's the angering part on all of this, right? Because ICE knows, and we know, that they've always had the power to release everybody safe and together. And again, they continuously choose not to, and they would rather separate families than to do the right thing.
Right. I mean, it seems like these next 10 days then are critical in terms of raising a voice and in community action. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, something that was very powerful and that was actually the turning point for family separation 2 years ago was public pressure. The reason why the administration stopped separating families was because the entire country was angered that they were doing this. Mind you, family separation was happening even before the Trump administration, but it was amplified then. And so what's very crucial right now is for all of us to do the same thing we did back in the summer of 2018, and demand that ICE frees everybody, children and their parents, safe together.
Yes.
Correct. With their parents.
Because I think what was so confusing when the ruling came down on its face, it looked like a positive. thing. And I saw in so many places that it was lauded positively, but I saw the RAICES comment and was like, oh, this is not actually, it's not what it seems.
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, Martha, the immigration issue and law are it's comprised of so many intricacies. And that's what happened when that ruling came out. You know, people saw the headlines, and even the media saw that, you know, we're writing from a very positive angle without understanding the very terrible intricacies of this decision.
Right. And so I think that this is really helpful, and I think that there's one very clear call to action that is like, get loud, help people very quickly understand what the reality of this is. And then how else can we, what else can we do to support the work that you're doing right now?
Yeah, definitely what you mentioned, Martha. We've been doing phone banking the last 3 days. We've been calling Nancy Pelosi, Senator Schumer. We've been calling ICE, and it's not just, and by us, I don't mean just RAICES, right? I often see all of you, all of the community members who are part of this.
The ones that want to deliver the actual promise of this country.
Correct. Correct. People have been phone banking. We've had over 500 people each day call continuously and demand that they tell ICE to release everyone safe and together. So we are regrouping because today was supposed to be the deadline. Our advocacy teams will be regrouping to figure out if we continue this phone banking into next week. So I highly encourage everyone to continuously visit our website or follow us on social media so that you see if we will be doing the phone banking again next week, so that you can help us express your anger and your frustration with this, and ask our elected officials and demand that they tell ICE to release families. So that's definitely one very actionable item. You can also do it on your own. You don't have to wait for a call to action from our organization to do so. If you are very savvy with figuring out who your representatives are, who your senators are, your members of Congress, get out there, give them a call, email them, let them know that you know what's going on and that you need their help. And then we also have on our website, we have a take action page where you can see the multiple calls to action that aren't just addressing family detention, but that are addressing things like DACA, that are addressing the inhumane conditions people are living under detention. So there are multiple ways to get involved on our website.
There are so many layers to how, there's so many layers of abuse in our immigration system right now, particularly as it relates to the southern border, that it's just, it isn't new. It isn't new to this administration, but it is certainly more egregious under this administration and more directly mean. But this is a legacy that we have not contended with in the United States since our beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, another thing I always encourage people to do is to educate yourselves in immigration. Our immigration system is deeply rooted in white supremacy and racism. It began because we wanted to keep, you know, our Chinese community members out of this country. It then moved on to targeting Mexicans through the Bracero program. People were being sprayed with DDT because this country believed that they were dirty and infested with lies. And so I challenge all of us to really look at the history of immigration, and you will realize that the system in and of itself has been and continues to be deeply rooted in white supremacy and racism.
Yeah, we have built a couple of issue-based kits, and immigration was the first one that we did, because I do think it's so important to ground in our history. and to understand that this didn't happen today. None of this happened today. And that so often these systems there's nothing broken about the systems that we function in. These systems were constructed to deliver the results that we are seeing today. And if we don't like those results, it's then up to us to reform these systems. So we can actually deliver the promises that we have said in the Declaration of Independence or, on the Statue of Liberty,
Correct.
but have never gotten to see. And always rooted in white supremacy. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, but we will continue to fight, all of us, including all of you that are joining right now, to uproot those systems and dismantle them to create a more humane approach to what is happening, because it is possible. It's very much possible.
It is absolutely possible, and it's possible with collective action. Like with all of us picking up the phone or calling our friend that's a reporter here or this influencer there, but doing the things that we have in our wheelhouses to elevate the issue and make noise.
Absolutely.
And make sure that you have the funding that you need to do the good work that you do.
Thank
right?
you. Thank you.
It can't be cheap.
I love that you mentioned that, because this work is very difficult. It's very emotionally taxing. One of the biggest things we focus on at RAICES is self-care for our staff. I've worked at many places, and I think for the first time, I am in an organization that prioritizes that very much, because it's very needed. And so we're very grateful to be able to have the support from the community to fulfill the very big need of legal representation, of free legal representation, as well as advocacy, but also to be able to support the people that are dedicating their lives to this work that on a day-to-day is a lot of hard work.
And I would imagine the stories that you and your team carry in you from the relationships that you build and the things that drive these families to even, cross this border and then be held in detention centers. I can't imagine what it must feel like to carry all of the stories too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see many community members on the day-to-day that are seeking legal help.
And they are heroic.
I'm sorry?
The people that are going through this are heroes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's something that I really wanted to touch upon. The people who are going through this and enduring this are very resilient, right? And we also have to remind ourselves that while their resiliency is there, that it also comes with a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
That will manifest in many different ways, even after this process that they're going through is over.
Right.
I mean, we are reading a lot of research, and we partner with a lot of medical experts who have done extensive research showing how the trauma that children endured when they were separated from their families will most likely manifest in very negative ways in the future. And it's terrible to see that those things could have been prevented, and that there was no reason to cause that type of trauma to a child or to a parent who was separated from their family. So there is a lot of resiliency, and there is also a lot of trauma that's coupled with this. And I think, at least for me personally, there are a lot of moments that is the point where I realize, yes, this is hard, and I'm also very privileged in where I am in now being a U.S. citizen. I was undocumented for many years, but now being a U.S. citizen. And so in no way, shape, or form am I suggesting this savior-like complex, right? Because that's very problematic. But rather understanding your privilege and your platform to be able to do something so that we can all ensure the rights and the protection and safety of our brothers and sisters and siblings.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Yes. I want to invite anybody to ask questions that has them. You guys feel free to trickle them in. I want to show you this because you maybe have seen this image, but
yes.
Jocelyn Riojas made this to be the cover of our first thing because we imagined what the Statue of Liberty would do if she were on the southern border.
Mm-hmm. I love that, and I love Jocelyn. So I'm so glad y'all work together.
Yeah, she's great. There's a lot of really beautiful art that has expressed out of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so family separation is the biggest, I'm sure the biggest priority right now in the next 10 days, but you do do so many other things. And I would love for, that's my son. Rivi, can you say hi?
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi.
But you guys do so much other work. I would love for you to like, in order of the hottest fires, if the next 10 days is number one, what are 2 and 3?
Yeah, I think the next big one is DACA.
Because that was not everybody is safe.
Correct. Very similarly to Judge G's order, as I'm sure most of you know, the Supreme Court ruled very recently that the Trump administration's memo to end DACA did not follow the correct legal procedures, and it wasn't on par with the ethical legal procedures that people in the administration, including, have to follow in order to rescind such things. And so I do want to say it was a small win, because it did give our DACA siblings a moment to take a deep breath, right? Because they are living on a day-by-day uncertainty of what's going to happen to them. Anywhere from no longer being able to work, no longer being able to be protected against deportation, but also the very real fact that the government now has all of their information.
Right.
Where they live, where they work.
So unsafe.
Correct. Where they are.
Yeah.
And with this very volatile administration when it comes to immigration, there is a very real fear that they will use that information to deport people.
Yeah.
And so that's really
support families, the parents of DACA recipients.
Correct, because when ICE shows up at your door, they ask everybody's status, and if there's somebody who is in your family who does not have status or mixed status, even if it's just a friend or a neighbor, it doesn't matter. They just take people. So it's a very real fear, and that's really kind of our next big fight that we're going to have to face, because where things are right now, the Supreme Court did rule that rescinding DACA was not legal. And interestingly enough, Judge Roberts.
That was a surprise.
It was a surprise. And I will say that it was a surprise and a bit of a disappointment, because he literally spelled out to the Trump administration how to do it correctly. Yeah. In his dissension to this decision. And so we thought, wow, we get it. You voted against this, but you also said, go back and try again, and here's how you do it.
Yeah.
So all that being said, the administration has been back and forth on what they're going to do, because they can propose another memo to rescind it again. And it has been extremely angering to see how the administration has been using this. A few days ago, Trump was on the news stating that he was going to look out for DACA recipients and find a path to citizenship, which he cannot do through executive order.
No,
It has to be
Congress has to act.
correct. And so as activists, that gives us a very real picture of how he's using DACA recipients as a bargaining chip. And as a campaign tool in order to gain. And so again, another piece of evidence that he's not invested in people's humanity or people's real life situations. He just wants to get elected and wants to use people in order to do that. And so we are in limbo, to be quite honest, about that. Our teams are preparing for a rapid response if there is another memo. There are many other legal teams aside from RAICES that are preparing to once again sue the Trump administration if this happens, in hopes that it halts any immediate rescission of the program. But you know, we're also gearing up for a very real 2020 election in which we hope that Trump is no longer the leader of our country, but if we do have a different leader, that they too take into consideration that we need the right to migrate and that we need the right for people to be safe and protected in this country, and not just for DACA recipients, but their families, because that's something that they very much advocate for, that they shouldn't be used as bargaining chips or that it should be one over the other.
Yeah. I think that that's a really important distinction to help for folks to understand, because it's 700,000 DACA recipients right now, or something in that neighborhood. But then when you add their families to the mix, it's, you know, we're talking about several million people that have been living and working here and paying taxes and been productive, great members of this country and contributed their lives to this country, that deserve immediate safety here and the full rights and protection of the laws. And that's again on us to keep the pressure on whatever or hopefully the new administration. I mean, we cannot afford, as humans, I don't think we can afford 4 more years of this administration.
I hope not.
But we have agency in public pressure.
Absolutely. And in voting, you know, I think it's a huge, I mean, our voting systems even then are very intricate, right? But if a lot of us, if the masses really speak, I find a lot of hope in that, because there are a lot of people in our country that deeply care about each other and that deeply care about what's happening to other people, and that I know are very much against the things that are happening to our Black siblings and our LGBTQ plus siblings, and in many different interconnected and intersectional areas that also have a lot to do with immigration, but even outside of just immigration, really going out there voting, and the more people we can get out there to express that they no longer want these violations to human rights to happen, the more chances we have at changing this inhumane policy trajectory.
That's right. And even in that, there is the folks that are in power now are so specifically aware of how they hold power that they're really good at suppressing and making sure that communities don't have their full power of the vote, and they will use any tactics available to them to make that so. And so I think for those of us that have a lot of privilege, to help make sure that our brothers and sisters that are going to be voter suppressed aren't, is a very good use of the next several months leading into November 3rd.
Yeah, absolutely. This reminded me of a very interesting thing that happened in immigration. A few days ago, the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is an agency that grants the statuses to people, right? So when you're applying for asylum or you're applying for citizenship, this is the agency that grants those things. They were severely defunded by the administration recently. And what's happened is that a lot of our community members that were going to be new US citizens will no longer be able to complete their process, which is really interesting and such a good tactic from the administration to keep people from obtaining protection, but not just protection, the benefits of a US citizen to be able to vote. And there are many, many people who will be waiting past November now to be able to fulfill that process. And it's a tactic for voter suppression within immigrants who usually statistically tend to be much more progressive in their voting.
Yeah, I am not surprised to hear that at all. Okay, so Jenny has a question. Do you and the lawyers you work with find tension in simultaneously working within a system which you also want to change?
Yes, all the time. And it's hard because it's frustrating because it's a system which it's a system in which we're asking agencies to grant protection for our community members that we represent legally. And it's equally a system that we're trying to dismantle, right? And we have unfortunately been the recipients of retaliation for doing so.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting collaboration that has to happen between our legal teams and our advocacy teams. Because when we are strategizing about how we are going to use whatever tactic to address anything happening in immigration, we have to very much check in with our legal teams to make sure that we identify those potential retaliation points and what happens in that, and is there a way to potentially avoid that. This is actually, if any of you are in activist groups, this is an opportunity when RAICES uses partnerships and collaborations to use tactics that will target the thing that we're trying to accomplish. And sometimes it is as very real as asking another organization who's our partner to help us with something, because we know that we're also on the front lines representing our clients, and some of those things may affect them very negatively if they want to retaliate, which they do.
Yeah. It's something I am lucky enough to serve on the JOLT initiative board, and it's, I mean, it's the same. You put yourself in the way of trouble, the more freedom you're trying to get for people, right?
Correct. So until we're able to dismantle the whole system, we just have to be very creative.
Yeah, and work together.
Correct.
To keep it. Okay, well, I feel like I could talk to you forever and would like to go get coffee and sit and figure out how we're going to get all this done.
But we have another question.
Oh, dime.
Yeah. Thoughts about or call to action to prevent ICE Citizens Academy training program? That's from Sarah Pierce.
Sarah Pierce, good one.
Yeah, that's a wild one that when I saw it, I just didn't surprise me, because we live in some very terrible moments when it comes to immigration. For those of you who don't know what this is, ICE wants to launch a pilot program, the Citizens Academy, in which they will train civilians, like any of us, on arresting procedures. basically, they want to equip people to be able to arrest our immigrant siblings, which, as you can imagine, that just opens the door to a lot of issues, right? Especially because agencies like ICE operate very much under a very arbitrary system. They have more often than not targeted people for the way they look, for being brown, for appearing Latinx, or from a different country. And so their tactics and procedures are foundationally rooted in racism. And now they want to arm civilians to be able to do the same, and so that they can help them across the country to do this. I know that the very first one they want to pilot is in Illinois. And so we are currently not working on anything to address that very specifically, but I definitely encourage all of you to follow the Detention Watch Network, which has partners everywhere in the country, continuously working on things. They have touched up on this and they've highlighted this issue. I have no doubt there are groups in Illinois that are currently working on that. So we don't have a call to action specifically for that, but definitely follow Detention Watch Network. They're on Instagram, on Facebook. And definitely search and see if there's anything in Illinois specifically targeting this pilot program, because if it's successful and they feel like a quote unquote, right, in their eyes successful, they will be launching this nationally. And can you imagine citizens arrest?
It's easy to imagine the profile of person that will be drawn to that program, and then it's easy to imagine what happened to Ahmaud Arbery.
Correct. 100%.
That is chilling. Okay. Also, given that the right to be a refugee and seek asylum in another country is an international right, I wonder if there's any way that pressure can be applied internationally on the US to change its systems. Obviously, the US holds a lot of power within the international system, but is there some kind of international accountability mechanism which could add pressure to the US to change and improve its immigration systems?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question.
That's Jenny.
Jenny.
Yeah, I definitely also could have just asked that out loud, but I wanted to get it all down.
Yeah, it's a good question. We are exploring that as RAICES right now. We're exploring what that looks like at the United Nations level, because it is an international law that we have agreed to and that we've had agreed to for many years. We haven't gotten too far on that. We're still exploring what the different committees look like and how we can tackle it through the different committees. I think one of the biggest challenges is that in a way, the US also holds a lot of power in the UN. It is one of the biggest powers within the United Nations. It doesn't mean that the UN won't push to do what's right. It just means that it's going to take a lot longer to strategize around that at that level, especially because it's a very exploratory stage for a lot of immigrants' rights organizations to dive into this. It has been brought to committees' floors, and it is something our team is currently working on. And so hopefully we can find the right path to be able to surpass a lot of the powers that spearhead the UN that may present challenges in that.
It seems like that is a great strategic move, not even relative to this administration, because I don't think this administration gives any care about what happens at the UN, but as proactive to, should we ever find ourselves in a place like this again, to build a culture around that accountability.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of people who deeply and truly care about this issue at the UN level. And we're at the exploratory stages of strategy around this so that we can surpass some of the challenges that may present with some of the bigger powers in that arena.
Yeah. Great question, Jenny.
Yeah. Any other questions? And we, we do a lot of different things at RAICES. We do citizenship processes, asylum processes, green card processes, unaccompanied minors, is a big portion of our work. We do detained work. We are inside Carnes, one of the detention centers in which we're fighting for people to be released. And just a piece of information there, over 70 children have tested positive for COVID in these places, in Carnes, Dilley, and Berks, and that's not counting their family members and staff members that have tested positive in there. And so that just adds to the urgency of why we need this to happen soon, because we already had a lot of healthcare issues inside. They don't care. The healthcare that is existent is very minimal, if anything, non-existent. I can't tell you how many times we've heard very serious illnesses happening in there and community members do not receive any care. And there are people who can't even get soap to wash their hands inside these places. So
and I mean, it is like the perfect breeding ground for COVID.
Correct. On paper, ICE likes to say that they are keeping people at 6 feet of distance, but they have their common areas, the only place that they have for people to sit and eat anything, and they are not social distancing there. And people don't have the freedom to say, I don't want to sit close to someone. They have to do what those officers do. And so they're being made to be in close contact with others.
It's another layer of terror on an already terrorizing system.
Correct.
Okay, so here's what we need to do. Get really loud for the next 10 days, and as long as it takes, but like in particular, if it means press, getting anybody that has a following or a voice or a platform to scream and shout about what the reality is of the so-called release of the kids in 10 days, and to very specifically ask that release happen with their families.
Correct.
Because otherwise the human rights abuse that follows is, we can spend another 10 hours on that. Send money to RAICES so they can keep doing this work. And volunteer to make phone calls, like get on and make phone calls. Do you need physical volunteers for anything? I know that you have some, yeah.
At the moment, we don't, mainly because we want to keep people safe. And also because sometimes those opportunities are very far and few in between. No one is allowed at detention centers. They barely let our attorneys and legal assistants in sometimes. And so that's the challenge. But the phone banking stuff, if it happens again next week, it's on Zoom parties, which have been, also a good space for activists to be together in the call to action.
Yeah, because what feels like all of this information is overwhelming and hard to hold, but important, like critically important that we look at it and understand it and then metabolize it into action. So we start to deliver the world that we have been promised and told exists.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure there are 100,000 other things we could do, but those three right now.
Yes, yes. And I definitely encourage everybody to continue visiting our website. Follow us on social media. On Instagram and Twitter is some of the two biggest places where we often post calls to action. And I say often visit them because a lot of the things that we work on are rapid response, meaning that they just happen. We need people to act immediately. One example of that actually, and I'll be very brief, I know we don't have a lot of time, but it was 2 days ago, we were trying to keep a Muslim family from being separated from Carnes, and it happened very fast. and unfortunately they were separated. And the father is now in a detention center in Laredo, but we are still asking people to help us call ICE so that ICE releases the dad of this family unit. Mom and child are safe. They've been released, but as you can imagine, being a parent doesn't mean that you're not, or being a father doesn't mean that you're not deserving of freedom and safety with your family.
Mm-hmm.
And they often take that route that, you know, women and children, but not dads.
Right.
So follow us there, because the calls to actions are always on Twitter and Instagram immediate.
And is there a way that we can partner with you to extend welcome to our new families, our new brothers and sisters in the U.S.?
I think so. I think there's definitely some ways to explore what that looks like,
Okay.
you know, in a very culturally competent and safe way. And so I would definitely love to follow up with you, Martha, and Ross and Jenny, to look for more ways to collaborate.
Okay. And anytime you need help getting things loud, we help. We'll be there.
We're adding you to the list.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys so much for being here. Ana Maria, thank you.
Thank you all so much to everyone who joined. I appreciate each and one of you.
Thank you, Ana Maria. We so appreciate you. Like, what you're doing is amazing. Cannot express my gratitude. Like, si se puede, en serio. So thank you, everybody, for coming. Enjoy your Friday, your weekend. Give money to RAICES. Seriously.
Thank you so much.
Take care and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Come back at 4 o'clock, 4:30, we have yoga with Jess G. And then at 6:30 at night, we have Shabbat prayers with Rabbi Lev Beish. So, you know.
That sounds great. It's a good self-care.
Your social calendar. You're more than welcome to do that.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ana Maria.
Bye-bye.
You're the best.
She's the best.